Do 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 do. Oops. There we go. I don't know. This was totally unplanned, totally unannounced, totally nobody knows that I'm doing it. Totally people who follow will get the notification on Facebook, and those who have rang the little bell after subscribing on YouTube, they'll get a notification. But other than that, I don't think anybody knows that I'm doing a show tonight because it's been, I think, almost 2 months. And given that the show was supposed to be happening every other week, it feels like an eternity. So I'm thinking, though, I've probably missed 3 shows. So probably a little, or 4 shows. I don't know. It's been a long time, you guys, and I apologize for that. Life has been crazy busy lately. So as many of you know, I moved Shelly down here from Grand Rapids. So she is all moved in. That occupied a week of, I think there was going to be a show. I don't remember if it was the week before, the Wednesday, Thursday before she moved in, or if it was the whatever after. But as you can imagine, moving in, there's a lot of moving parts to that, and settling and moving stuff around and getting house prepared. So that occupied a little bit of time. And then I want to, without trying to break my brain, I'm thinking that maybe I had something going on with work that got in the way one week. And then I think another show, I'm really not sure. I've totally lost track of why and how I've fallen off the radar from doing the show. Although I do get people every week ask, when is the show? When is it coming on? Dwayne Hudson has been a good person to push me and ask about the show. And in all honesty, I haven't talked to Jerry in a while, so I don't even know if he wants to do the show anymore. He hasn't reached out and said or asked if we're doing a show or not. So I don't know if he still wants to do it or if he just figured I gave up, so he gave up. But regardless, I figured the least I could do is, I don't know, drop in and just say, hey, I'm still here. I'm still taking photos fairly regularly. It's just been eking out the time. Hey, how's it going, Margot? I don't even know if I've ever seen you in the chat room before. But just trying to eke out the time to do the show. Like I said, life has just been crazy hectic. But I'm hoping that once I get kind of into October a little bit, my time frees up. A lot of my day job has just, it's kept me so busy that by the time I'm done in the evening, I'm done. I get home and I'm like, I'm kaput. Last night, I think it mentally came to a head. I came home and I said I was going to lay down on the bed for a few minutes at like 7. And then I woke up the next morning at 5:45. So apparently I needed what Shelly would call a sleeping day. I took my sleeping day in the middle of the night. So I eked out like an extra, probably 3 or 4 hours of sleep last night and slept like a ridiculously long time. But with all that being said, I think a lot of my work stuff is kind of getting caught up. So should be able to get back to this on the regular. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm 100% making an excuse for why. So I can talk a little bit about some of the things that I've been up to as far as photography goes and some things I've got planned for the future. Some trips that I could potentially use for like photo workshop scouting. I'd like to really get back into that. COVID broke that. I took a trip kind of in the middle of COVID with Mark Miller to Oregon. The whole point of that was twofold. One was to visit, having never been to the Oregon coast before. And the second one was also to scout for a future workshop. And, like I said, COVID just kind of got in the way of workshop plans and stuff like that. But I think I'm going to start doing some workshops next year. It's funny. I was literally telling Shelly, she's sitting over here on the couch, telling her that a week ago, maybe, that I'm going to not do anything next year. I'm keeping next year open for me, but I think I would like to squeeze in one workshop next year. And if I do workshop next year, It's going to be a lot smaller scale. I'll probably just have like 3 people on it, and that's it. Attendees, and that's it. And then I can just hyper focus on the 3 people that I've got. In the past, I've done workshops with Mike, and I've done them with Mark and other people, and they're fun. It's easy to lose track of where everybody's at with their photography, what's going on, and guiding and stuff like that. So I think moving forward, I'm going to change my MO and just make them very, very, very personalized, very small. And Shelly will probably be with me, I'm guessing, on these to help as well. But I figure if there's 3 attendees and 2 of us there, it'll be a lot more fun, a lot more personalized. So keep your eyes open for that one. So again, like I said, I have been out shooting lately. It's been a mixed bag of things that I've been out shooting. I honestly wasn't really prepared to share photos, and I'm just kind of ad-libbing this whole damn show. So I'll gather up a couple photos here just to talk about some of the things that I've been shooting, and then talk about some things that I've got planned for the upcoming year and the rest of this year as well. So let me queue up some of those really quickly here. I apologize, I didn't have this ready at all, but hey, that's just how we do it sometimes here. Man, I'm trying to remember. Hell, it's been so long since I've done a show. I don't remember the last bit of content that I even shared with everybody. So that's kind of where I'm running into this little sticking point here with getting some stuff prepped. But here we go. I'll just grab like 4 or 5 pictures that'll kind of summarize what I've been up to lately. And I guess while I'm getting all those around, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you've probably seen I'm having like a huge gear sale this weekend. And it's funny because the last time I talked about selling gear, some what do I call this person? Well, hell, I'm not sponsored by anybody anymore. I don't have to worry about what I say. I've been watching a new series on Hulu called Reservation Dogs. Highly recommend it. And one of the things that they say on that show is they call people a shit ass. And so anyways, last time I talked about having a camera sale, some shit ass basically was dogging me because I was peddling my junk on people. So to that guy, wherever you're at, this show's not for you, buddy. So anyways, as you know, I've got like a crap load of gear and it just sits on shelves and collects dust and it's stupid, and decided that it was time to move it. So Shelly said, why don't you have a sale and have friends come over that live in the area, and offer them great deals on stuff. So that's what I'm doing. Having like a huge sale on Sunday. If you live close enough to where I live in Michigan, find me on Facebook and find that post, and you can see what all I've got for sale. Got a decent amount of stuff for sale, and I'm literally just telling people, just make me a reasonable offer, and so far I've had several people just kind of chime in and say, hey, will you take this for that? And they were reasonable offers, and I said yes. So there'll still be plenty of gear come Sunday for sale. Whatever doesn't get sold at that sale, then I will consider shipping outside of the state. I just wanted to avoid the headache of packaging crap up, sending it. What if something happens en route? Now somebody's going to be pissed and say that I sold them something that was broken. And for those who commented on Facebook, and don't worry, none of the things that I'm selling have been in a lake or a river or a pond or anything like that. Cause I've had that happen a couple of times in the past. So here, let me do a quick photo share. Just talk about some of the stuff that I've been shooting lately. And then I can just kind of jump into what I am looking forward to for the next year. So we'll just start off with this. Again, Shelly moved down here, and she, on her commute to work in her new job in this new area, of course, she's going to find like this massive sunflower field literally like 10 minutes from my house that I never knew was there. I probably would have never found it. So, so she took me over there to see where this was at. And I decided to go back on another trip as well and meet up with an old photography friend of mine, David Bostador, who I haven't seen in a long time. And he was just literally a day away from going and getting a major spinal surgery done. And he asked me where the sunflower field was at, if I would tell him. And you know how it is. If you share a location like this, so many people will just start wading out into the middle of the field and taking pictures and just kind of wrecking it for everybody. So I was a little hesitant on who I shared stuff with, but David is, I've known David since I was 7 and I'm like 500 years old. So I trusted him with everything. So I met Dave out there again the day before he was supposed to go for the surgery, and we shot out there, and we lucked out. The night we were there, the sky was just super crazy dynamic. So I went out there with Dave and did some shooting. And what's funny is you probably can't see it in this shot, but I removed his truck from the photo. And while we were shooting, I got lucky enough to where there was a flock of migrating geese that moved through. So I just waited for them to get in frame and made sure I snapped that frame while they were there. For those gearheads wondering, yes, it's Sony again. This was the A7 III, and this is the Tamron 17-28. Single frame exposure, no bracketing. I haven't bracketed since I started shooting full frame. And honestly, I stopped bracketing even with Olympus because I found that I got a lot more dynamic range from my Olympus cameras if I shot in handheld high. Oh my God. I have a glass of scotch here. I haven't even touched it yet, and I'm already slurring. If you shoot in handheld high res mode on the Olympus cameras, I find that the dynamic range is getting really close to some of these full frame cameras. So that's just kind of a little tip. I thought it might make sense if I threw that out there. Ooh, I just totally got rid of my screen. Let me fix that here. So yeah, again, single frame, of course, a lot of post-processing in this one as well. Tone down the sky a little bit, make it a little more dramatic. This one, I did a technique to this, but the lighting and everything is pretty much straight out of camera. This is with again, the Sony A7 III, but this is with Tamron's 75-180. And I shot with this purposely, this lens, so that I could zoom in and compress that background, compress the foreground as well, and just kind of give this, it's almost like a tilt shifty kind of feel to it. But the treatment that I did on this is one of my favorite techniques, and that is to jump over into Luminar. And they have this mode, I think it's called Mystical or something like that. It gives this really cool, like soft, I don't want to call it fuzzy, but it's just a really soft, glowy edged look to a lot of your scene. And then I'll go in and then I'll mask out that effect in an area that I don't want to have it because I want it highlighted. So, for this one, it would be, these middle sunflowers right here. I mask those out. There's no glowy edges on those, but you can see over here, I mean, it's out of focus as well, but they tend to have a glow to them as well. So that's just a fun technique that I've been doing probably over the last, I'd say year and a half, maybe, in my photography, is doing my light edits in Lightroom, maybe shooting out into Photoshop if I need to content aware fill an area to get rid of a house or a telephone pole or something like that. And then going from Photoshop into Luminar just for that filter. And you can do the same technique. It's kind of like the Orton effect. And if you just Google that, ORTON, Orton effect, it's a technique you can do with Photoshop, but it's so much faster to just do it in Luminar and then mask out where you don't want it to happen. In Photoshop, it involves, several layers and stuff like that. Finally, the last sunflower pick. Again, kind of the same treatment, believe it or not. I know they look so completely different, but I did the same technique here as well. And this was shot with the Samyang 14mm f2.8. Really no effort put into a photo like this. Honestly, I didn't want to trudge into their field. So I was standing next to the row closest to the edge of the street and stuck my arm inside of the sunflowers and tilted it up and shot. And it took like 2 shots, I think, to get one where I had the sunflower in focus that's in the center of the frame. And then again, I did the same technique here. I just went in to Luminar. I gave it that glowy edge. And yes, I completely cheated in Luminar and increased the sun rays here by adding sun rays in Luminar. I know if you use Luminar a lot, you probably recognize that instantly, but something that I did that I don't see most people do when they use that sun ray thing in Luminar, you can go back in and erase where that effect is at. So I erased it off of this center sunflower here where the sun is supposed to be behind it. I'll see a lot of people drop the sun like right here in this spot and then leave it, which is totally not as believable because the sun is behind the sunflower. So I masked out and erased it from being in front of the sunflower. Kind of makes it a little bit more believable. And I also did the same thing as well, in a few different spots by erasing rays where they probably shouldn't be. So again, just a little bit of a behind the scenes of how they were processed. And another one, this was from, I think, 2 weeks ago. There was a chance for aurora, a pretty good chance actually. And I just decided to say, screw it, I'm going to go for it, and took off. I don't even remember what time I left, but I drove a little over 3 hours up to Ludington. It's a town here on Lake Michigan, again, about 3 hours north of where I live. And there are other spots that are probably more popular for shooting the northern lights. In Michigan, a popular one is the Mackinac Bridge, which is way cooler than the Golden Gate Bridge. I've seen them both. Trust me, Mackinac is better. But Mackinac Bridge is a popular spot. There's another lighthouse called Point Betsy that's in a really dark area. It's a gorgeous lighthouse right on the water. And then there's another one, Little Sable Point. All of those are amazing locations to shoot northern lights, but they're also amazingly popular locations with just anybody who's hoping to go see the northern lights. So I decided that instead of going to Little Sable Point, which was probably 35 minutes closer than this lighthouse, or instead of driving another hour or so further north to Point Betsy, or another couple of hours further beyond that, even to Mackinac Bridge, I decided I'd give Ludington a shot. And I'm glad I did, because when I got out there, there was no one on the pier. And I got out there before sunset at probably about 7. I was out there long enough to catch sunset, and I stayed out there until midnight, and no one was out there but me. So I was super pumped to have the whole pier to myself and be the only person that got northern lights that night out there with this as their foreground. And something else I want to point out too. So when you're shooting northern lights, I love northern light shots where you're just like looking up at the lights. It's amazingly cool, but I'm a sucker for having something in the foreground to add to your scene. And in Michigan, we've got so many damn lighthouses. You'd be kind of crazy not to want to do that. So that's what I did here. And for anybody who is curious about shooting northern lights, I just want to throw a couple of little bits of information out there. Number one, we are just now probably like a third of the way into our current solar maximum cycle. So over the next couple of years, it's going to continue to ramp up. We're going to see more and more opportunities for shooting the northern lights. So I'll just throw this out there. I use Aurora Pro on my Android phone. There are a million apps out there that you can download. I would just recommend getting one of those apps. And if you're about as far north as Michigan or further north, you can set alerts up in all of those apps to be alerted when there's a chance to see them. And one of the things that you can do, one of the criteria that you can set for that is this KP number, the KP index. If you live, I'm going to say Michigan northward in the United States, and you get one of these apps, set your app to notify you if the KP is going to be 5 or higher. Okay. Once you get south of Michigan, you're really going to have the KP at like 6 or 7, and that's not common. But entering into the solar maximum, once we hit the peak of that, there's potentially opportunities further south than Michigan, getting down into like Virginia, Kentucky, areas like that, if you can get into a dark area. So again, download an Aurora app, set it up to alert you, KP of 5 or higher, and you'll at least have a little bit of a head start. The media is going to tell you, oh my God, massive solar flare heading towards Earth, blah, 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 blah. Be ready to go. Okay, that's great. Be ready to go. You're always going to want to be ready to go. But there's some things that go along with that. Number one, when they list the times when they figure that this is going to impact, the majority of the time is listed in UTC. And I still don't have my head wrapped around I can't do the mental math, honestly, still in converting UTC to my local time. So I just go to Google And if it says it's going to be at like, 1700 UTC, I just type in 1700 UTC to EST, Eastern Standard Time, and Google will convert it. So then I know. So if it's supposed to arrive at whatever, universal, whatever UTC stands for, then I know what time that is in my time zone. So keep that in mind. Lots of times you'll see it might say it's going to arrive on, we'll say, October 17th. Well, October 17th, it might be October 17th at 1 a.m. So that's we're knowing the universal time code. I think that's what it stands for. Knowing how to convert that will really help you make sure you're in the right spot. Because if you see October 17th, it might be arriving at 1 a.m. that morning and you're going out the night of October 17th and you're not going to see anything because it already came. So bear that in mind. Looking at aurora forecasts can be super confusing. I already gave you one number. That's the KP. The other number that is equally as critical as the KP number, and honestly more critical in my opinion, is another number that you'll see on all these forecasting sites, and that's the BZ, Bravo Zulu, BZ. The BZ is basically the magnetic lines on the Earth and how far south they dip. You want to look for a BZ number that is as low as possible, preferably in the negative range. So the night that I shot this was a KP. I think at the time when this hit, I think the KP was only at 4, but the BZ had dipped down to like -12 for like 10 or 15 minutes. We'll get to the time thing here in a second because that's important too. But so the KP wasn't really high, but the BZ had gone negative far enough to where it still made the aurora visible. So again, the two most critical factors, KP 5 and above, and a BZ that's dipped south or negative. Okay, so those are very important. And the part about time that I said I'd allude to here in a second was this. This was fleeting. I drove 3 hours. I sat out there for 5. I shot for 10 minutes, maybe 15. And then it was done. It was done for the whole night. That was it. Pack it up and go home. Now, so with that being said, you just kind of want to be prepared. Obviously, this is a longer exposure shot, but this wasn't super long. This was like, I think 8 or 9 seconds. You can do longer exposures. A lot of it's going to be dependent upon, the ambient light and things like that. You always want to be aware of not overexposing your foreground and things like that. So, and because I wanted some depth in this, I wanted to be able to have my lighthouse in focus, but I also wanted, enough depth of field for me to have the aurora show, those pillars and all that. So it's crispy enough. You'll see a lot of places tell you shoot wide open, blah, 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 whatever. I actually stopped down a little bit and I bumped up my ISO more. Again, kind of a perk of full frame because this was shot on the Sony A7 R3. One of those perks of the full frame sensor allowed me to just jack up the ISO higher probably than I would have normally, which meant I didn't have to shoot wide open, which meant I had a little more depth of field, which meant I was more likely to get more in focus. So this shot, I think, is shot at like f4.5 and ISO 3200 or 6400, but not for very long. It's just like 8 or 9 seconds, whatever it took to expose the foreground here. And I know I'm throwing a lot of information really fast at you. So rewind this after the show's done over on YouTube and go back and play it back and take notes. But I would just love to see other people get the opportunity to shoot this again as the next year to 2 years rolls on. These opportunities will be more and more common. I'm fingers crossed from everything I'm reading. There's really big hopes that this solar maximum is going to be really big. So it might be, kind of one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. And I don't recall off the top of my head how long solar cycles are. So I'm Googling it right now. 11 years. Okay. So every 11 years is how long a solar cycle takes. Okay. So again, we're kind of in the midst of the current solar maximum. We've got solar maximum and then we've got solar minimum. So the last 11 years was a solar minimum, or more than 11 years ago, because we're trudging forward into solar maximum. I think we peak out in 2025, if I'm not mistaken. So again, over the next couple of years, your opportunity is going to be coming. So just be ready for it. Yeah, aurora. Yay. I was talking about work and talking about being occupied and all of that stuff and occupying a ton of my time. Well, some of the stuff that I've been doing as a community involvement part for my work is there's a festival in Jackson, Michigan called Bright Walls. It's super cool. It is a mural festival where they have artists from all over the world come in and paint literally building sized murals on the sides of the buildings. And the company I work for in my day job is a lighting company. We manufacture, we call them high bay lights. They're lights that would go like up in the ceiling of like a big factory or a big warehouse or a big box store like a Menards or something like that. Actually, I mentioned Menards specifically because we light all of their interior and exterior lights. So as part of the community involvement, we are like one of the big sponsors for that show, and we provide lighting for the tents that get set up during the show, and we provide floodlights for the artists so they can paint at night. And then after the show is done, we provide lighting that gets mounted on all the buildings so all of the art can be illuminated at night as well. So long after the festival is done, the work that my company and I put in endures for years. So it's pretty cool. As part of that, I spent last weekend 2 nights in a row attending the event because they also have performances there. They have bands come in. They had, I don't know, just a couple of really fun groups come in. So I got to do a little bit of concert photography and walk around and do all that. So that was what I was doing last week. And so that was a reason I wasn't doing a show last week, because I was helping hang lights and set up lights for this event. And then on the weekend, I was going to do that. So I've been pretty tied up. So for this, again, I took, Sony. This is the A7 III, not the R3. I just feel like the 3 does a little bit better in low light, but these are all shot. I went the first night, and I'm not a concert guy, so a couple of my shots just didn't turn out how I wanted them to. So I decided, because the way the light is always changing because it's stage lighting, they go from blue to red, they flash, they turn. All I knew is I wanted to be able to freeze people. So I jumped into shutter priority, let the camera manage the ISO and my aperture for that. So I set my shutter speed at 1/160th of a second, which was good enough to freeze pretty much all the action on stage from when these guys are moving around. And this is shot with the Tamron. This is the 28-75 at the wide end. And then I also stood back behind the crowd and I did some shots as well. And this one actually is funny because I set up the longer Tamron, the 75-180, so I could stand behind the people and shoot, but then ran up to the stage and was using that long lens zoomed up really close to get shots like this of this guy performing. And super impressed with the results with that camera as well. Again, to maintain that shutter speed, it pretty much kept everything wide open at f2.8 all the time. And the ISOs didn't have to get too high, but man, I like that you can see all the sweat glistening on this guy as he's up there performing, because it was definitely a hot night. A lot of fun, big, cool experience to be a part of. But again, it's just one of those things that's kept me super occupied. It's, again, a huge event. Probably 30,000 people over the course of the weekend attended it. And I had weeks of preparation planning, for what products we were going to use there, and then also getting down there and helping set up. So, again, more excuses as to why the show hasn't been going on, but kind of getting towards the end of what I would consider like a really busy period. I've got a couple of trade shows coming up. One, I think, in like 2 weeks, and then another one like 2 weeks after that one, that I have to travel for. But once I get past those, I'm kind of back to a normal life. I've got a fun trip coming up. I'm taking my boys and their friend and Shelly down to Atlanta. Going to be down there for 3 days. There's a big gamer convention going on down there called DreamHack that my sons want to go to, because a lot of their friends that they game with live all over the country, and they're all coming into this big, huge trade, or I keep wanting to call it trade show, big convention. So we're going to turn them loose to go do that. And Shelly and I are going to find something to do to occupy our time. I'm hoping that maybe I can find the time to swing up to Old Car City and take Shelly there, because it's such a cool place. I'd love to get back there again and do that. So I've got that coming in November. Then I've got a break for a while. Thank God. I need a break. I'm starting to break. And then I'm taking the family to Maui for a week. I would love for that to be a scouting location for a workshop. If I've got people who would be willing to fly to Maui for a workshop, just let me know in the comments or get a hold of me on socials, And maybe that's next year's workshop. Maybe Shelly and I go back to Maui for a week and meet up with some of the listeners or viewers and just do a personalized workshop on Maui. I've been there several times before, so I think with all these trips under my belt, I've got a pretty good grasp on some fun locations to shoot there. So if not, I'll be thinking about what next year is. I'm probably only going to do like one workshop. So also keep that in mind. Again, it's going to be super small, probably just 3 attendees. So it can be very personalized and in depth. And I'm going to do it how I've always wanted to do a workshop. I've always wanted to do a workshop where it's very in depth in the field, but then I want to sit down and do some in-depth post-processing as well. I've got numerous techniques that I use to edit my photos that I don't always talk about or I don't share, that I haven't done tutorials or videos on and stuff like that. And it'd be fun to sit down with a small group of people and take what they've made and show them how I'm doing things, and then let them use those techniques in addition to what they already know, and just kind of see what kind of stuff they come up with. That I think it'd be a lot of fun. So that's maybe my 2023. Might be spending it with a couple of you somewhere fun. Again, I don't have a location picked out yet, but if you've been to anything I've done in the past, don't really go to boring locations. So it'll be fun for sure. And with that said, I've got a cold glass of scotch here with my name on it and a girlfriend sitting on the couch waiting for some time with just the two of us. So I am going to sign out, and I promise this isn't the end of the show, and I do apologize for the big break, but man alive, I needed to step away for a little bit and kind of get things taken care of. I'm sure you all understand everybody has hectic lives, and mine just caught up with me. So until the next show, you guys take care of yourselves out there. Get out there and keep shooting. Again, if you're near Michigan, and you want to swing up this Sunday from like, what did I say? 1 to 4? From 1 to 4. I'll have something to drink, probably something to snack on, some super cheap gear, just making off around it, all kinds of stuff from cameras and lenses to camera straps and bags and really high-end filters that'll probably go for way less than they ever should go for, stuff like that. And if not, get a hold of me after Sunday and I'll see what's left, and maybe I'll start shipping some stuff out. I really don't want to ship it out, but I might if you're cool. And if you're watching, you're cool. So, and if they're friends of you because you're watching, they're cool by association. So anyways, thanks again for dropping in, you guys. I really wasn't expecting so many people to show up. So super cool. I really appreciate. Let's see. I'm gonna answer if there's any questions in chat. I'm sorry, I've been ignoring it. So let's see. I appreciate all the nice comments. Thank you. And if you like the stories behind the photos, I will definitely do that more. I probably should. I know in the past 8 years or 9 years or however long I've been doing this podcast, lots of times it's just a photo and then these are the settings, blah, 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 go on. I'm going to try and change that a little bit more, go a little bit more behind the scenes, not just with settings, but maybe with, the why and the how as well. So let's see. Thank you for the compliment on the Aurora shot. I appreciate it. It's funny because I thought it wasn't going to happen. I kept checking my app and was about ready to give up. And I was going to take a cell phone photo of my tripods with my camera sitting on it. And I was going to send it to Shelly, and my Google Pixel, like the iPhone, also has like a night mode. So I started the exposure and then I could see all these pillars of light. And I said, holy shit. And I put my phone down and I looked and I could just see these faint pillars on the horizon. I ran up to my cameras and started exposures, and that's when I got that. So it was pretty cool. Let's see. So Margot, if we go to Old Car City, it's not too far from your house. I didn't know it was that close to your house. I'll definitely message you and I will let you buy us a drink for sure. I only know of one place across from Old Car City to get a drink, so maybe there. So again, until the next show, you guys take care, get out there, keep shooting, and stay in touch with me. Pester me like Dwayne does. Dwayne says, hey, are you going to do the damn show or what? I'm honestly 50% doing it because of him, 50% because of Shelly tonight. So love you all. Take care. See you guys.